Shalom, 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 family, and welcome to another Bible class or another Bible study. My name is Uzi Alewi. Let me make sure you guys can hear me. Yes. My name is Uzi Alewi, one of the teachers of Congregation CHOKMAH BINAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York, giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High, King of the universe, for life, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Grateful to this mighty King for my life and the life of all of you who are here today. As we just finished up with Yom HaKippurim, the fast, the Day of Atonement. We thank the Most High God that we made it to another side of the Day of Atonement. And we pray that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to have mercy, bless us, and keep us. That He'll continue to guide us, protect us, and watch over our steps and our endeavors as we continue to strive for righteousness and to do that which is good before Him. So praying that the Creator be with all the sick, be with the downtrodden, the poor, the needy, that the Creator be with the homeless, with the fatherless, with the widow, with all those who need His loving kindness and His mercy. Please let me know if you can hear us clearly, because I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't see anybody in the chat yet, but let me refresh this. Give me a 1 if you hear us clearly. Give me a 1 if you hear us clearly. Wonder. Shalom, shalom, and Boker Tov, Terry Johnson. Anybody in the room, please give me a 1 if you hear me clearly. Please give me a 1. Thank you. Hallelujah. So we wait for everybody to come. Okay, so we doing good. So today, as we are approaching the first day of the Feast of Booths, hope that everybody's preparing, getting ready to build their booths. You know, whatever setup you have, your tent. It's a joy to go out and to do this. So right after I finish this, I'm going to go out and begin to start building my booth with my sons. Have a good time doing it. So this time, we're going to, today, episode number 130, we're going to be going over the Feast of Booths of Succoth. And for that, I'll pass it on to my brother, Rabbi Chief Binyamin. How are you, Rabbi?
I'm doing good, giving praise and honor to the Creator of the heavens and the earth for all of our lives. Hopefully you're doing good along with everyone that is watching and listening on this day as we have our Bible study again on this Sunday morning, as we do so every Sunday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time on this channel. So we do invite everybody to share this with your family and with your friends. As long as you use the Bible as the foundation of your belief, this Bible study is for you. So we are grateful for the opportunity to call upon the name of the Creator this day and to be able to study His Word. So if you haven't done so, just subscribe to the channel, like the video, of course, hit the notification, and again, continue to share with your family and your friends so we can all join in with this weekly Bible study. So we thank the Creator of the heavens and the earth for all that He does for us. So at this time, we are going to have our discussion on today's topic, which is the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Festival of Booths, also known as Succoth in Hebrew. And this year, calendar year 2025, it will correspond to, starting the evening of Monday, tomorrow evening, the 13th, concluding on the 14th at evening as well. Again, that's for this calendar year 2025. That's when the festival will actually begin. So corresponding to the 15th day of the 7th month on the Hebrew calendar, which we'll be going over shortly. So we just wanted to get over that, start off with that, so that people would be in tune with the taking place of the Succoth festival this year. So we're going to go through a few passages in the Holy Scriptures so that we can see what this festival is about, how it came about, and the importance of it overall. So as we study this, the Bible, study the Word of God week by week, our intention is to do whatever we can to get close to God. So in order to do so, we have to read through His Word. And there are some things that we may overlook, some things that are not or may not be taught. But, this information that, especially for the festival that we're talking about today, is in the Bible. So definitely important for us to study it. It actually first appears in Exodus chapter 23, where God is detailing it 3 times in the year that all males must appear before Him, all the males of the children of Israel. And this instruction, these instructions were given at Mount Sinai as God was detailing these instructions to Moses to give it to the children of Israel. So in Exodus chapter 23, in verse 15, it says, "The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep 7 days. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread as I commanded thee at the time appointed in the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labor, which thou sowest in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when thou gatherest in thy labors out of the field. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Lord Yahweh." And actually, we could have started from verse 14, where it says, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. So our discussion for today is specifically about this Feast of Ingathering. And as we go through the scripture, we'll get more and more detail on this Feast of Ingathering. And these feasts or these festivals that Jehovah God gave to the children of Israel correspond to also agriculture, or they could also be known as agricultural feasts. Next, we're going to go to Exodus chapter 34, which repeats a lot of the details in Exodus chapter 23. And we're going to also get the term that was given there in terms of the Feast of Ingathering, which, as it says here, at the turn of the year in this verse 22. And then it says, 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before the Lord Yahweh, the God of Israel. And then to get a real explanation of, or further, more detailed explanation of this festival, this is where we get into Leviticus chapter 23. So Leviticus chapter 23, as we've been going over the previous appointed seasons, over the past few weeks, we know that Leviticus chapter 23 gives us all of the holy convocations of Jehovah God. So it starts off by saying, "And Jehovah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, The appointed seasons of Jehovah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my appointed seasons. 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of work. It is a Sabbath unto Jehovah in all your dwellings." So again, the chapter is talking about the appointed seasons or the holy convocations of Jehovah God. And the first one that is mentioned is the Sabbath day. We're not going to talk about that in detail at this point, but that was the first one mentioned. And then in verse 4, it continues on by saying, "These are the appointed seasons of Jehovah, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their appointed season." So as the chapter continues to go on, and it's going to give a list of all of the holy convocations. And these appointed seasons that they have to be kept are based on the dates on the Hebrew calendar, with the exception of the Feast of Weeks, which doesn't have an exact date on the Hebrew calendar, but there is a count that takes place. So it still would have to have an appointed season. So when God is saying that these holy convocations have to be kept in their appointed seasons, is based on primarily the date on the Hebrew calendar that these holy convocations occur. So we're going to go down to verse 33. And this is where it's going to start beginning. This is where it's going to begin to talk about this festival, this feast of ingathering that we read about in the book of Exodus at the turn of the year. That is said that Jehovah God gave to the children of Israel. And as a side note, before we delve into this festival of ingathering or this festival of booths, just explaining the reason why we mention the name of God or pronounce the name of God as we are reading through our scriptures, as the name is, we pronounce it here as Jehovah. Many people might pronounce it as Yahweh. So in the Hebrew Bible, or the Holy Scriptures, which was originally written primarily in Hebrew, in the text, the name of God appears there in the locations where your English translations might put the words the Lord, where they have Lord in all capital letters or just a capital L for the word Lord. So in those locations, God's name appears there. In the Hebrew text, the consonants of God's name are Yod, He, Waw, He, which corresponds to the English consonants, YHWH. So as a result of that, we pronounce the name of God in the appropriate places so that we can know the God that we're speaking about and the God that is speaking to us, which we acknowledge is the creator of the heavens and the earth, as detailed in the book of Genesis, from the beginning. So this is just to show a consistency of the God that is speaking from creation, even up until this point, knowing that God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt and now delivering to the children of Israel through Moses all of the instructions that are supposed to be observed from this point and onwards. So when I say this point, from the point that it was delivered to them and onwards after that. So, and Jehovah spoke unto Moses, saying, from verse 33 of Leviticus chapter 23, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of this month is the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto Jehovah. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work. 7 days you shall bring an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. And you shall bring an offering made by fire unto Jehovah. It is a day of solemn assembly. You shall do no manner of servile work. Next week, we'll speak more in detail about this 8th day or this day of solemn assembly, which takes place on, as it says here, the 8th day. But our discussion today is primarily about the feast or the festival of tabernacles. So it says, so we get the name Succoth from this verse 34. Succoth coming from the word sukkah, which is, as I said, a thicket, a covert, or a booth. And we're going to get the description of how the booth was constructed later on in our discussion. So the Succoth is booths, coming from the word sukkah, which is a booth. And the children of Israel were supposed to dwell in booths for 7 days and have this festival. As we know here, the word Chag in the Hebrew is festival, as you see in the right-hand side. So it's a festival of booths, or as it translated in many books, the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths, because the children of Israel were supposed to dwell in booths throughout those 7 days, as we'll see as we continue reading. But it's important for us to also know that the first day, as it says here, is a holy convocation, and on it no manner of servile work is to be done. So as we mentioned, on this calendar year, it will begin starting tomorrow evening. For the calendar year 2025, we're going to begin tomorrow evening, and actually just made a mistake earlier. Instead of 13th or 14th, is actually the 6th and the 7th. So, but it's still, the Feast of Booths will start tomorrow evening on Monday, October 6th in the evening. and ending on Monday, October 7th. So just clarifying that, because I made the mistake in the beginning of our Bible study, mentioning that the Feast of Booths would be in the 13th to the 14th. So again, making that correction. So hopefully everybody caught that correction. But it was mentioned that it would be starting tomorrow. So it was the dates were wrong, but it will be starting tomorrow night on our corresponding with the calendar year 2025. So again, Monday, October 6th to Monday, October 7th, from evening to evening. This would be the time frame not to go to work. This would be the time frame not to go to school. This is the time frame not to do any schoolwork or any work, that's related to occupation. A day to minimize all of your, eliminate all of your chores, your household duties. There is permission given for certain type of work, especially when it comes to eating. So whether people are having a feast in their homes or a feast in their congregations, cooking would be permitted on the first day of Succoth, or the first day of the festival of booths. So when God says, "You shall do no manner of servile work," this is where we eliminate all of the personal, the mundane work, again, all the schoolwork, the housework, the occupation, your trade, all of those types of duties are to be stopped on the first day of the feast. The other 6 days is still a festival. There's still a day to enjoy, still a day to rejoice before God. But of course, regular work can be done on those remaining 6 days. Then it continues here in verse 37. These are the appointed seasons of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, to bring an offering made by fire unto Yahweh, a burnt offering and a meal offering, a sacrifice and drink offerings, each on his own day, beside the Sabbaths of Jehovah, and beside your gifts, and beside all your vows, and beside all your freewill offerings, which you give unto Jehovah. Howbeit on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruits of the land, you shall keep the feast of Jehovah 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And this word for solemn rest is Shabbaton, which relates to Shabbat, of course, or Sabbath, because there's some form of stoppage that is done on these days. So whenever you have the word Shabbaton, which, as you see on the right-hand side, is connected to the weekly or the seventh-day Sabbath, is also attached to the Day of Atonement. Yom HaKippurim is also attached to the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths. Is also attached to, as it says on the right-hand side, the Feast of Trumpets, or we know Yom Teruah, the Feast of the Day of the Horn Blast. So these days are and also Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day of Solemn Assembly. This word Shabbaton is attached to these particular holy convocations that have to be kept in their appointed season. So there's some form of stoppage, not a complete stoppage for all of them, but some form of stoppage takes place on these days, which is why the word Shabbaton comes into play in regards to that. So there's a feast that is to be kept for those 7 days. On the first day, it says, when you have gathered in the fruits of your land, you shall keep the feast of Jehovah 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Jehovah your God 7 days. And you shall keep it a feast unto Jehovah 7 days in a year. It is a statute forever in your generations. You shall keep it in the 7th month. And you shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are homeborn in Israel shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Jehovah your God. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the appointed seasons of Jehovah. So this brings us to the conclusion of this chapter. But as we go back a little bit and we're talking about the festival of booths, it's important for us to, as much as possible, build a booth that we can dwell in for those 7 days. Or if you're not able to build a booth, then find a booth to dwell in, throughout the 7 days. So whether it's someone that that has one at their house, or a congregation that you may attend, it's important to spend some time in the booth each of the 7 days of the festival, as we receive the commandment here. Next, we're going to go into the book of Numbers in chapter 29. So when it spoke earlier about the offering that would be performed on or during the Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles, Numbers 29 gives in detail those offerings that would take place. But we're going to speak specifically again about the holiness of the day, because we're not able to perform offerings today. But these chapters, Numbers chapter 28 and Numbers chapter 29, details all of the offerings that would be taking place on these holy convocations. So starting from verse 12 of Numbers 29, it says, "And on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work, and you shall keep a feast unto Jehovah 7 days." Then from here, from verses 13 through, just to skip down, because it is given the offerings that are to be done on each of the 7 days. So for verses 13 through 34, again, it details what offerings should be done on each of those 7 days. And specifically, just to make notes, but you can read this part on your own. When it mentions you shall present a burnt offering, as we read it from verse 13, an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto Jehovah, 13 young bullocks, 2 rams, 14 he lambs of the first year, they shall be without blemish. And then on each of the 7 days, it starts off, the only difference is that there's 13 young bullocks on the first day, then it diminishes by 1 on each of the 7 for the remaining 6 days of this festival. But regardless of whether we have the offerings available or not, the day is still holy, because that's what it starts off saying first. "And on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work, and you shall keep a feast unto Jehovah 7 days," or keep this festival unto Jehovah for 7 days. Next, we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 16, which talks about the 3 times in the year that all males must appear before Jehovah God. The book of Deuteronomy is in the 40th year of the children of Israel dwelling in the desert, this time in the plains of Moab, and Moses is given his, as they would say, final address to the children of Israel. And this is the generation that would be crossing the Jordan, because 39 years prior, there were a multitude of sins that were done that caused the children of Israel to remain in the desert for 40 years. The primary, or the last one that caused actually the sentence being given of them staying in the desert for 40 years, was the situation of the spies that went to spy the land of Canaan. And you can read more about that in Numbers chapters 13 and 14, but just giving some background on the reason why the children of Israel spent 40 years in the desert. And Moses is reiterating to this generation that is about to cross the Jordan the laws of God in the book of Deuteronomy. And so when we get to Deuteronomy chapter 16, it talks about the 3 times in the year. So as it mentions from verse 13, "Thou shalt keep the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. After that, thou hast gathered in from thy threshing floor and from thy winepress. And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shalt thou keep a feast unto Jehovah thy God in the place which Jehovah shall choose, because Jehovah thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase and in all the work of thy hands, and thou shalt be altogether joyful. 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before Jehovah thy God in the place which he shall choose, on the feast of unleavened bread, and on the feast of weeks, and on the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Jehovah empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Jehovah thy God, which he have given thee." So just reiterating, the Feast of Tabernacles is a a festival. The 7 days are to be observed by dwelling in booths for the 7 days. The first day being a holy convocation, but rejoicing before Jehovah God all throughout those 7 days. So this is an opportunity to, many of us, will still be going to work for the remaining 6 days of the festival, but this is still a time to rejoice before Jehovah God you along with your family in, whether you're in your house or whether in a congregation. So just take advantage of this season as it occurs. The final passage that we're going to read about is in Nehemiah chapter 8, which details how the children of Israel kept the Feast of Booths in Jerusalem. And this is during the time where they were returning from the Persian captivity. So where the children of Israel went into captivity into Babylon, and then you had the Medes, which took over the Babylonian Empire. Then you had the Persians, which took over or joined with the Median Empire. So during the time of the rise of the Persian Empire, the children of Israel were given an opportunity to return to the land. They were rebuilding the house of God, rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, and they were reading the law of God. And they did so in the 7th month. As it says in the beginning, it says all the people. Actually, we'll start from verse 1. It says, and when the 7th month was come, and the children of Israel were in their cities, all the people gathered themselves as one man in the broad place that was before the water gate. And he spoke unto Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, which Jehovah had commanded to Israel. And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation, both men and women, and all that can hear with understanding upon the first day of the 7th month. And he read therein before the broad place that was before the water gate from early morning until midday in the presence of the men and the women and of those that could understand, and the ears of all the people were attentive until the book of the law. And Ezra the scribe stood upon a pulpit of wood, which they had made for the purpose, and beside him stood Matithiah and Shema and Ananiah and Uriah and Hilkiah and Maaseiah on his right hand, and on the left, Bediah and Mishael and Malchiah and Hashum and Hashbadana, Zechariah and Meshullam. So this is just given some background on what is taking place. So the children of Israel are about to hear the law of God being read to them. And Ezra opened the book in the sight of all the people, for he was above all the people. And when he opened it, all the people stood up. And Ezra blessed Jehovah, the great God, and all the people answered, Amen, Amen, with the lifting up of their hands, and they bowed their heads and fell down before Jehovah with their faces to the ground. It talked about them reading in the book of the law. They found out that this particular day that they were reading the book of the law, which is the first day of the 7th month, was a holy day. And as they continued reading, we're jumping down to verse 13. And on the second day, this is the second day of the 7th month, and on the second day were gathered together the heads of fathers' houses of all the people, the priests and the Levites, unto Ezra the scribe, even to give attention to the words of the law. And they found written in the law how that Jehovah had commanded by Moses that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month, and that they should publish and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, Go forth unto the mount and fetch olive branches and branches of wild olive, and myrtle branches and palm branches and branches of thick trees to make booths, as it is written. So these items that they went forth to gather, that we read about in Leviticus chapter 23, these branches of the thick trees, the branches of the goodly trees, they took all of these items together, and this is how they built the booths. And it says, as it was written. So continuing from verse 16, so the people went forth and brought them and made themselves booths, everyone upon the house upon the roof of his house, and in their courts, and in the courts of the house of God, and in the broad place of the water gate, and in the broad place of the gate of Ephraim. And all the congregation of them that were come back out of the captivity made booths, and dwelt in booths. For since the days of Joshua the son of Nun unto that day, had not the children of Israel done so, and there was very great gladness. Also, day by day, from the first day unto the last day, he read in the book of the law of God, and they kept the feast 7 days. So we see here an example of, or a specific example of when the children of Israel kept the Feast of Booths, and how they kept the Feast of Booths, understanding that the first day was a holy day, and no servile work was done on that day, as it is today, and then making sure that they had booths that were built so that they can dwell within it for the 7 days. So as we approach the Feast of Booths, this year, again, we will begin tomorrow night, Monday night, Monday evening, conclude with Tuesday evening. So it's going from Monday, October 6th to Monday, October 7th, from evening to evening. Again, just reiterating that because a mistake was made as we began our Bible study this year for today. But the 13th to the 14th is actually going to be Shemini Atzeret, which we'll discuss in more detail during our next Bible study. So we thank the Most High God for this opportunity to read His Word this day. I'm praying that understanding was obtained, that we can all learn to grow in our service before the Most High, and that at this time, if there's any questions or comments that people may have, they may ask it. Chief Uziel will moderate this portion of the conversation. And again, we just wanted to make sure that we enter into this festival with joy, keep it with joy, build our booths if possible, and make sure that we dwell within booths throughout those 7 days, but also making sure that we keep the first day as a holy day, monitoring our actions, our words, and our thoughts on that first day.
Torah by Rabbi. So you guys can't see it, but I got the pink D.C.B logo behind me. For some reason, Zoom is not letting my camera take over. So, but we are supporting all of the people who are going through the battle right now, the people who have gone through the battle, and those who have lost the battle on this Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So to all of our sisters out there who are survivors, we pray that the Most High God will continue to keep you healthy, keep away any disease from you, anything from coming back, later. Pray that the Most High God be with you. Also, for those who have had family members that have lost the battle, we pray that the Most High God be with all of you for quick healing, and that you would, the Most High God will make your loved one who has passed away, make them to be a memory and their name to be a blessing forever whenever their name is mentioned. So yeah, we know that that's devastating disease, but just like everything else, sisters, go get checked out. If you feel anything funny, make sure you go and seek out. First, you go to the Creator, and then you seek out the physician. All right? Y'all know better than me. So go to the Creator and then seek out the physician. All right? So we got some questions here. Let me start from the beginning at the top of the list. I'm going to make sure I don't miss anything. Yalita Moore. Shalom, if I have to pick someone up to come on the first day, is that considered work?
Say that one more time.
If I have to pick, if they have to pick, like somebody picks someone up to go to the first day, like you stop by someone's house and pick them up. You might be driving, the other person might not be driving.
Right. Okay. So yeah,
I think that that's what they're saying. Shalom, if I have to pick someone up to come on the first day, is that considered working? Like you pick someone up in your car to bring them?
No, that leads into a bigger conversation in terms of driving on the Sabbath day or holy days. But in terms of just picking somebody up to go to worship on the first day, this is the conditions that we are in regards to driving and doing certain things on holy days in order to get to a place of worship. So just for the purpose of clarity, so to speak, we have to, or it's in our best interest, and maybe so we have to, it's in our best interest to make it to a place of worship on all of the days that God considers holy convocations. Is actually a benefit for us when we do so. And of course, if not, people today use online methods, which of course goes into another discussion as well. But in terms of today and how we interpret the observance of these holy days, then for this time it wouldn't be work. We just pray that the Most High would accept us and forgive us for certain things that we do in order to get the fullness of these holy convocations, during their appointed seasons. So hopefully that does answer the question. So if you're going to a place of worship, you're driving there and someone doesn't have a ride and you want to pick them up to take them to the place of worship, by all means, do so that you can all enjoy, that holy convocation day.
Question from Sister Abi. Please define servile work, Torah Rabbah.
So the servile work would be occupational work, schoolwork, household chores that don't involve anything to do with cooking for that day. These would be the things that we should refrain from. I'm just giving the example as it says in Exodus, and we could go there. Exodus chapter. It doesn't use the term no servile work there, but we usually go to this chapter to get the template of what is meant when it says no servile work. So when God tells the children of Israel about keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread and mentions, we'll jump to verse 16. And in the first day this is the Feast of Unleavened Bread specifically, just to avoid any confusion, but we're going to show the connection. So where it says, and in the first day there shall be to you a holy convocation, and in the seventh day a holy convocation, no manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done by you. So when God told the children of Israel that the only work that can be done on this day is in regards to what everyone must eat, of course, this is talking about cooking, what is baking, boiling, and the preparation of food. That's the only work that can be done. So when we return to Leviticus chapter 23, and God gives a description there of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it says in verse 7, in the first day you shall have a holy convocation, you shall do no manner of servile work. So in connection with what we read in Exodus chapter 12, in terms of the work that is permitted, now when we get this term of no servile work, and it's repeated throughout all of these holy convocation days in Leviticus chapter 23, then we get a better understanding of the work that is allowed versus the work that is not allowed. So again, this is occupational work. So we, no going to work or the job or dealing with your trade. This is the day to not go to school, or the night to not go to school as well, not do any school work and any of the household chores that don't have anything to do with what you're eating that day, or don't have anything to do with eating. Those things should be refrained from on this day.
See here. Things they don't discuss in church. Will the national that attacked Jerusalem be required to keep the feast of Succoth with the punishment of drought and plague for disobedience? Zechariah 14:16 through 19.
Yes, so based on Zechariah 14, all nations, and this chapter is talking about what's to take place in the future, or in the future time, as it mentions that all the nations, after this big battle that you read about in Zechariah chapter 14, which is related to what you can read in the book of Ezekiel with the war of Gog and Magog, that once all of this takes place and the children of Israel return to the land that God gave as an inheritance and are restored. And also, as we read in the book of Isaiah, where it says that the house of God would be a house of prayer for all peoples, that's reiterated in the book of Micah. So once the children of Israel return to the land and it's known that Jehovah God is God and that beside him there is no other, and the nations of the earth are to worship before him, as we read in earlier, that these laws that God gave to the children of Israel are to be observed by the homeborn as well as the stranger. So in this chapter where it talks about the nations of the earth have to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, and the punishment as it details in the question is that those nations that don't go up to worship God in the Feast of Tabernacles, they won't get any rain for that year following. So therefore they wouldn't get any crops. And it mentions specifically Egypt, which doesn't depend on rain, but depends on the Nile River. So God says that they won't have an overflow of the Nile River as their punishment for not observing the Feast of Tabernacles. So of course, this is talking about a future time, but this is also something to show, based on the question, and thanks for the question, because this also shows the importance of the Feast of Tabernacles. So if God considers this Feast of Tabernacles or this Festival of Booths important for other nations to keep, then definitely the children of Israel are supposed to be observing the Feast of Tabernacles.
People say we don't have to do it. We are not in the land. Isn't it so that if you are a living soul, whatever land you're in, you're supposed to keep the holy days?
Yes, because the holy days, as it mentions, are to be kept in all generations and all of our dwellings. So no matter where we are and in any generation that we are living in, we're supposed to be keeping the Feast of Booths, or keeping this Feast of Tabernacles, along with all of the holy convocations that God specified in Leviticus chapter 23, because you'll see that is, it doesn't mention that these days have to be kept in the place that Jehovah God has chosen for his name to be called. Now, during these days, when the children of Israel were in the land, in the future, when the children of Israel are in the land again, there were offerings that are to be performed. But the days are holy before the offerings are brought in. So the observance of the day as a holy day is actually more important than the offerings, as we read in the places in the Holy Scriptures where God preferred obedience than sacrifice. So sacrifices, or the offerings that we read in the book of Leviticus and other places, they are important, but the obedience, and part of that obedience, is not doing offerings outside of the place that Jehovah God has caused his name to be called, and not having offering done other than from the lineage of Aaron, the first high priest. These are the things that have to go in connection with the offering. So, but regardless of that, the days are holy, so we have to keep them in every generation, no matter where we dwell.
Are the three festivals of Deuteronomy 16 required only when there is a temple in Jerusalem?
No, because when we read them in connection with Leviticus 23 and other places, they are to be kept anywhere. The offerings have to be can only be brought when we have a temple standing, in such as the temple in Jerusalem. But that's the only thing that would be required for the house standing. But the days themselves being kept holy are to be kept everywhere that we are.
Uh, is cooking allowed on the Shabbat day in this high holy time?
On
Yeah.
the Sabbath day stuff, no.
No, are they talking about on on the festival,
Well, so for the
is cooking allowed
in
on the
general,
Sabbath day in this high holy time?
right, so any
I'm not
Sabbath day,
understanding the quarter yet. The question.
yeah, so at any time, this cooking is not allowed on the Sabbath day. So even during the Feast of Tabernacles itself, there's going to be a Sabbath that occurs, of course, within those 7 days. Even on that Sabbath day, cooking is not going to be allowed. So again, on any Sabbath day, because the only day that is holy is the first day. And even if the Sabbath day was to fall on that first day, the Sabbath day rules would still apply where there's no cooking allowed on the Sabbath day. So on any time during a holy season or not, the holiness of the Sabbath day and the rules of the Sabbath day will still apply. So for the seventh day, Sabbath day, no cooking is allowed.
This next question was from the.
So the etrog or the citron is actually a tradition, or
Hold
part
on,
of a
hold on. I don't know if
tradition.
they heard the question. I think I muted it by mistake. Shalom, if the etrog in definition is a citrus, goodly fruit, if the citrus the Jews sell is not feasible, can a lemon, lime, oranges, or apples be used in the booth instead torah?
And so the citron or the etrog is a tradition. From what we read and especially what we see how it was observed in the time of Nehemiah, which connects to what we read in Leviticus chapter 23. The important thing is to build a booth out of those items, from the wood of trees and from the branches of trees. That is just the items to be used to construct the booth and to dwell within the booth for those 7 days. The tradition that came around later on, I can't give you an exact time when that tradition came around. It's definitely a tradition that came around with the Pharisees, where they translated the fruit of goodly trees as opposed to the branches of goodly trees. And then with their interpretation of fruit, then they define the good fruit as the citron, or basically a fruit that of the land of Israel itself. So just to answer the question specifically again, it's basically a tradition now. Many congregations still uphold that tradition, and there's nothing wrong with upholding a tradition, but we just want to make sure that it's understood that what's written in the law is that the branches and the wood of those trees is what God is speaking about specifically, that has to be taken, even the willows of the brook, because the willows of the brook, not going to be what we consider the willows today, but all of these items would be used for the construction of the booth itself and for the roof of the booth. So just making sure that there's a clear understanding between the tradition that is upheld today versus the law that is written. So again, there's nothing wrong with the tradition. So even with the tradition, if you don't have access to the citron, then yeah, the fruits, that's why you'll see many people get other types of fruits, not just a citrus fruit, but any type of fruit to put within their booth. But again, just making that clarification between the actual law that we read and the tradition that came around later on.
Now, are you pose? Question, I cannot get out, nor do I have someone to build a booth for me. I painted a picture of a booth with the 4 branches and citron. Would this be acceptable in your opinion?
So in terms of my opinion specifically, we could only do the best that we can. If we can't actually build a booth, then our prayers can go up to God and God will hear us. I can't determine what God says is or what God would deem acceptable or not. God knows what we're able to do individually and collectively. He knows the efforts that we put forth. So if you physically, it's impossible to have a booth built or to get to a booth during the season, then the prayers that your prayers can connect you with God. And whatever it is that you take, or whatever it is that you can do to connect yourself with the season, as it was mentioned in the question, whether it's a picture or something else, only God can determine what He finds acceptable. But it's still upon us to do the best that we can. And where something is impossible, just pray for the mercy of God, because all of us, in some way or another, is falling under the mercy of God. Because there are, whether it's the Feast of Booths or whether it's something else in the law, there are things that, based on how we live and where we live, is impossible for us to do. So in those situations, we just pray for the mercy of God to be upon us, but we still acknowledge the time frames that we are in and acknowledge the things that have to be done. It's such as we don't have the waters of sprinkling. So when we come in contact with a dead body, there's no way for us to be purified on the third, or have that sprinkling done on the third and seventh day, so that we can be clean afterwards. So the situation like that is where it's impossible for us to comply with that law. We do the best that we can in terms of just not willingly, touching dead bodies, avoiding it as much as possible. But, when it does happen, people tend to have to take care of dead bodies, or someone may die around you. Certain situations come about that you can't control. We don't have the waters of purification, but we pray that God will have mercy upon us. And as long as we acknowledge the laws that are supposed to be kept, even the ones that are impossible to keep, we just hope that the Most High will continue to be with us. Because as long as we have life, we have an opportunity to get closer to Him, and there's other methods that we can use to get closer to Him by following the commandments that we can keep to the best of our ability.
Last question from Sister Abi. I'm hearing there is no cooking on the first and the eighth day of Succoth. Is that correct? There is no eighth.
No. Right. So there's cooking is allowed on the first day of Sukkot. And then when it comes to Shemini Atzeret, how this congregation teaches is that there's no law that prohibits specifically cooking on Shemini Atzeret, or which is known as the eighth day of Solemn Assembly, which we'll talk about during our next Bible study. So unless those days fall on the Sabbath day, cooking would be allowed on those days.
I guess this one will be the last question. Rich people can build booths. Is there any Torah law to help homeless persons get permanent homes?
That would be beyond, I guess, the Torah discussion, so to speak. Because many of us, if it's the question is specifically about this season, many of us, even those of us that have homes, may not be able to build a booth, or many of us that may live in an apartment don't have the opportunity to build a booth, but we do the best that we can to get to one throughout the 7 days. So it's not, not only rich people can build a booth, people that have property, congregations that have space, those congregations may not be rich, but in order to build a booth, and as the years go on, we see how simple it is, to actually get one done. As years ago, most people went to a booth in their congregation, but as you have more and more homeowners, or more and more property owners, or more and more people that have space, people see how not when I say easily, not physically easy it is to build a booth, but the access is there. The materials are relatively cheap, and if whether you can do it yourself, or someone with even basic carpentry skills can put a booth together. So for those that are even homeless, and people that are homeless throughout the year, and they have to find shelter their concern is finding shelter, period, as opposed to just during the season. And so therefore, the question is sort of beyond the Bible study topic, so to speak, but just wanted to mention those things that if, for those of us that are able to build a booth, it is relatively easy to do so. But those that are homeless, their minds are going to be focused on other things, even during the season. And they're still, as well as all of us, looking for the mercy and the protection of God to not only comply with this season, but just live overall in a good manner before Jehovah God.
You say last question, and they keep putting questions up there. All right. All right. CEO Cole. Shalom, Chief Uzi Alawi and Chief Rabbi Binyamin. Can the online viewers of D.C.B visit on Shabbat and other holy days? Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is a simple answer. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. Like I said earlier, we are, as a congregation, we're supporting, our sisters who've gone through the struggle. Since this is Breast Cancer Aware Month, we're supporting all of our sisters who've gone through the struggle. And are people supposed to provide cover for us? I don't know what question. I don't understand the question. You understand what they're trying to say, Rabbi?
Provide cover.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
And the question would have to be given more specific, whether it's during the season or, overall.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Are people supposed to provide cover for us? It could be if someone has a booth. I'm not sure. You have to be more specific. Like I was saying, we support all of our sisters who've gone through struggle. We support all the families who've had someone who've lost a loved one to the battle, and we just advise all of our sisters to go out there, get checked out, do your regular mammograms and the things that you're supposed to do in order to be healthy. And if you do fall under the grip of this disease, that it could be caught early enough to where you could take care of it. So, and may the ones who lost the battle, may their names be forever be for a blessing, and pray that the Most High God will have them inscribed in the book of happy life and will protect them, their legacy, because they're gone. So also for all of you that would like to donate to our congregation, you can make your donations out to, as my son is singing in the background, you can make your donations out to on Zelle and on PayPal at our email, info@beitdcb.org. That's info@beitdcb.org. And you could donate to us on Venmo at BaitDCB. You can also donate to us on the Super Chat, as Terry Johnson just did. Thank you for your donation, Terry Johnson. May the Most High God bless and keep you. And we appreciate all of your donations and everything that you do for us. We appreciate your continued support. So, as we conclude, we hope that everyone has a great first day of the feast of the Chag, the festival. Pray that the Most High God will bless us all as I say these words, hoping and praying that Yahweh will bestow His blessing upon each and every one of us. Yivareka Yehovah Yishmareka. Ya'ir Yahor Panawale Kawi Kuneka. Yisai Yahor Panawale Kawi Asem Laka Shalom. May Yahor bless thee and keep thee. May Yahor make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yahor lift up his countenance upon thee and may he grant thee peace. Shalom. May the Most High God be with each and every one of you, and I pray that the Most High God will continue to bless and keep all of our families scattered in the four corners of the earth. Shalom, shalom, family.